What draws a fragment of matter from the cold silence between stars to glide toward our solar system and pause near the orbit of Mars? It is called 3I Atlas, the third interstellar object ever found, a wanderer that does not belong to the sun, yet now drifts under its light. No engines guide it. No familiar gravity claims it. Its path is alien, a curve cut from a map humanity was never meant to read. In the black gulf of space, it moves without voice, a shard of some distant sun, broken from a history we will never witness. It carries the quiet weight of forgotten stars, as if each fragment of dust upon its surface remembers a different sky. The telescopes that captured its faint light did not hear it. They only traced its silence across the void, yet the closer it comes, the less it resembles what we thought it was. At distance, it was only a speck. Now it becomes a riddle. Its orbit bends in ways our models struggle to predict. Its light reflects in patterns that whisper of something more than stone. Perhaps it is a mirror. Not of our image, but of our fears. We fear what the familiar sky hides. We fear the sudden arrival of the unknown. We fear the truth that the universe is not built for us, but indifferent to us. So the question lingers, heavy and unresolved. What if this is not merely a rock from beyond the stars, but a sign that the universe is far more foreign than we have ever dared to believe? In the stillness of space, discoveries rarely announce themselves with thunder. They begin instead as whispers, a flicker of light upon a telescope sensor, a data point that does not fit the pattern, a curve of motion that bends away from the sun, refusing to be tamed by its gravity. So it was with 3I Atlas in the mountains of Hawaii, where the sky opens with crystalline clarity. The Atlas Survey telescope scanned the heavens. Their mission was simple in design, yet profound in consequence: to watch for danger. To find asteroids that might one day cross Earth's path. Night after night, they swept the sky, tracing the faint glimmers of countless objects, measuring their arcs against the tapestry of stars. But on a night in late 2019, and with greater certainty in the months that followed, something appeared that broke the rhythm of the known. At first, it was nothing more than a smudge of light, dim and unremarkable. Yet when astronomers traced its orbit, the silence deepened into awe. This object was not bound to the sun. Its velocity was too high, its trajectory too open. It had not formed in the quiet nursery of our solar system. It had crossed the gulf of interstellar space. For astronomers, the recognition was almost electric. They had seen this pattern only twice before. Once in 2017, when a strange, elongated object called Oumuamua slipped past our world with unsettling speed. And once again in 2019, when 2I Borisov, a comet with a brilliant coma, revealed itself as the second known interstellar visitor. Now, against the black sky, a third one had come. And with it, the certainty that the cosmos was more porous than humanity had ever imagined. They called it 3I Atlas. The third interstellar object, the third messenger from beyond. At first, the classification seemed simple. Its faint glow resembled that of a comet, a nucleus of ice and rock shedding a ghostly tail as sunlight warmed its surface. Another cosmic wanderer, another cometary fragment lost from a distant star system and thrown across the galaxy. Such was the comfort of familiarity. Yet even in its earliest observations, 3I Atlas resisted the ordinary. Its light curve was inconsistent, flickering in ways that did not fully align with models of a typical cometary body. Its coma was faint, too faint for the energy it should have released. Spectral data revealed signatures that were both familiar and puzzling. Water vapor, perhaps, dust, certainly, but also subtle variations that left room for speculation. The Pan-STARRS telescopes joined in, extending the watch. Their wide-field vision confirmed the trajectory, charting the object's path with greater precision. The verdict held. This was no child of the sun. Its velocity exceeded the solar escape threshold, guaranteeing it had not been born here. It had traveled for millions, perhaps billions of years. A wanderer expelled from its home system by the gravitational violence of giant planets or stellar tides. As its orbit was refined, scientists realized its course would carry it toward Mars, grazing the outer reaches of the inner solar system before vanishing once more into the abyss. It would not stay long. These objects never do. They enter like whispers and they depart like ghosts. At NASA, the discovery was logged with urgency. Teams across Europe and the United States began sharing data, pooling their telescopic eyes. The European Space Agency issued notices, alerting the community that another interstellar body had arrived. Researchers who had built their careers on the study of comets now found themselves gazing at a specimen unlike any in their catalogs. The questions rose quickly. Was it fragmenting? Was it stable? Was its coma hiding something beneath the surface? Unlike Borisov, whose cometary nature was unmistakable, or Oumuamua, whose shape defied classification, Atlas seemed to occupy a strange in-between. It was comet-like, yet not entirely. It bore the marks of interstellar ice, yet also carried an unfamiliar fingerprint. Data streamed in from Mauna Loa and Haleakala, where the twin Atlas stations keep their watch. Each night, astronomers compared new measurements with the last, noting the object's subtle shifts in brightness. The numbers were precise, but the implications were murky. As is often the case in science, the more they looked, the less they understood. For the public, such a discovery passed quietly. Headlines noted the third interstellar visitor, but the story remained small, overshadowed by the world's daily noise. Yet within the scientific community, the air was electric. 3 interstellar objects within only a handful of years, after centuries of never witnessing even one. What did that mean? Were such visitors more common than believed? Had our instruments simply not been sharp enough before? Or was there something changing, something that drew them near with greater frequency? In research halls, the object was modeled. Computers simulated its trajectory back through space, tracing possible origins. Could it have come from the turbulent regions around a red dwarf? Was it expelled from a binary system, where gravitational chaos is the rule rather than the exception? Some models suggested it may have wandered for eons, crossing not just light years but epochs of galactic history before arriving here. And always the question returned to its strangeness. If it was simply a comet, why did its coma not behave as expected? If it was fragmenting, why did its light curves show patterns inconsistent with a natural break? Why did its spectra whisper of dust but hide the clarity of common volatiles? The more telescopes gazed, the more human imagination strained against the unknown. The Atlas team, whose mission was meant to guard against asteroids that threaten Earth, now found themselves staring into the cosmic equivalent of a message in a bottle. A bottle cast not across oceans, but across the galaxy itself. The story of 3I Atlas was not yet fully written, but already it carried the weight of mystery. Already it pressed upon the boundary between science and philosophy. It reminded astronomers that to measure the sky is to stand at the edge of comprehension, that every number inscribed upon a chart is also a question, echoing into the dark. And as 3I Atlas drew closer to Mars, the silence deepened. No signal came from it. No clarity resolved its form. Only the faint shimmer of reflected sunlight, captured by machines on mountain summits, transmitted across networks of data, and interpreted by minds both cautious and curious. The discovery phase was over. The mystery had only begun. In science, there are moments that feel less like discovery and more like trespass. Moments when data does not reveal the familiar, but instead strips away the comfort of expectation. 3I Atlas became such a moment. At first glance, it was comet-like. A faint body wrapped in a subtle coma, dimly reflecting sunlight as it drifted toward the realm of Mars. The assumption felt safe. Comets, after all, were the great wanderers of the solar system. Icy relics from the dawn of planetary formation, objects that traced elongated paths, shedding gas and dust when stirred by the sun's warmth. It was easy to place 3I Atlas in this familiar category, but the closer astronomers looked, the more that comfort dissolved. The first shock arrived through its brightness. Most comets brighten smoothly as they approach the sun, their ices sublimating into tails of vapor and dust. But 3I Atlas refused the script. Its light curve was unpredictable. Some nights its glow surged as if ignited from within. Other nights it dimmed unexpectedly, flickering like a failing beacon. The variations did not follow the natural rhythm of sublimation. They appeared in erratic pulses, as though something hidden within the object was breaking free or breaking apart. When telescopes focused on its structure, another layer of strangeness unfolded. Unlike the compact nuclei of typical comets, 3I Atlas appeared fractured, elongated. Its body seemed stretched, as though pulled by unseen forces or shattered into uneven shards that still drifted together. Some analyses suggested it was not a single solid mass, but a cluster of fragments clinging loosely by gravity's weak hand. A natural explanation, perhaps? Many comets fragment as they near the sun, yet even here something resisted simplicity. The arrangement of the fragments looked less chaotic than expected. The distribution carried a suggestion of order, almost as if its pieces were aligned, assembled into a form not entirely random. In the realm of astronomy, such impressions demand caution. Human eyes, trained by evolution to find patterns in clouds and constellations, can impose order where none exists. Yet the data did not lie. The shape was irregular, yes, but it carried echoes of structure. The shock deepened when spectra were analyzed. Light, split into its constituent wavelengths, reveals the fingerprints of matter. Through this, astronomers can learn what elements and compounds dwell within an object across millions of miles of emptiness. For most comets, the story is familiar. Water ice, carbon monoxide, dust, organic molecules. Traces of the primordial chemistry from which planets are born. But 3I Atlas whispered something else. Among the expected signatures, there were hints of materials uncommon in the solar system. Subtle, faint, but present. Ratios of carbon compounds that resisted easy classification. Possible metallic fragments that did not match the abundance normally seen in local comets. Even suggestions, though weak and debated, of minerals forged under pressures and temperatures unusual for icy bodies. If true, they spoke of an origin in environments unlike those of our own planetary nursery, perhaps near a red dwarf star with flaring violence, perhaps within the disrupted outskirts of a binary system, or perhaps somewhere stranger still. And then there was the rhythm of its disintegration. 3I Atlas began to fragment as it drew nearer to the sun, shedding parts of itself like a body unraveling. This in itself was not remarkable. Comets do this often. What was remarkable was the geometry of its break. The fragments did not disperse in the purely chaotic spray of a natural shattering. They appeared stretched along its trajectory, in ways that made astronomers pause. Could tidal forces alone explain the arrangement? Or was there an underlying architecture to how the body came apart? The echoes of Oumuamua returned. When Oumuamua passed through in 2017, it stunned the world with its elongated, cigar-like shape. No known comet or asteroid had ever taken such a form. Its brightness, too, fluctuated strangely, as though its surface was reflective in patches, rotating unevenly. And its motion, its subtle acceleration away from the sun, defied simple gravitational models. Some scientists proposed it was being propelled by outgassing, though no coma or tail was ever seen. Others whispered of solar sails or artificial origins, though such speculations hovered at the uneasy boundary between science and imagination. Now, with 3I Atlas, the unease returned. This was not a twin of Oumuamua. Its features were different, yet the parallels were unsettling. Again, the light curve shifted in unnatural rhythms. Again, its form appeared elongated, fractured beyond ordinary patterns. Again, its behavior resisted the tidy categories of asteroid or comet. It was as if interstellar objects carried a signature of strangeness, each one a messenger of the unfamiliar. Oumuamua with its cigar-like enigma, Borisov glowing like a comet but formed in the far galaxy, and now Atlas, fracturing into shards that hinted at assembly, carrying spectra that whispered of alien chemistry. The deeper the scrutiny, the more natural explanations strained. Each possibility held weight, yet each left something unresolved. Sublimation could explain the brightening, but not its erratic rhythm. Fragmentation could explain its shape, but not the apparent order in its debris. Exotic chemistry could explain its spectra, but raised questions of how and where such materials could have formed. And so, the haunting thought emerged. What if these objects were not entirely natural? Not in the sensational sense of alien spacecraft gleaming with intention, but in the subtler, more disquieting sense that interstellar space may contain processes unknown to our science. Processes that shape matter into forms we cannot yet comprehend. Objects that carry echoes of physics beyond the familiar. For centuries, humanity believed the solar system was a quiet, closed family. Comets and asteroids were born here, circling the sun like children of a single household. The discovery of interstellar objects shattered that belief. Suddenly, we knew that fragments of other worlds do not remain bound. They escape, wandering for aeons until they cross our sky. The cosmos is not separate neighborhoods, but a vast, interconnected ocean, its currents carrying debris from distant shores. But 3i Atlas revealed something more unsettling still. That these fragments do not arrive as harmless stones. They arrive as enigmas. They defy our models. They look stranger the closer they come. Distance provides the comfort of ignorance. Proximity delivers the terror of truth. Astronomers wrestled with the implications. Was this a statistical anomaly, the product of small sample size? 3 interstellar objects are not enough to define a class. Perhaps each is unique, a relic of different origins shaped by different stellar environments. Or perhaps there is a pattern. Perhaps interstellar space is littered with bodies that carry in them the fingerprints of unfamiliar processes. Perhaps strangeness itself is the rule. The data from 3i Atlas left many papers in its wake. Preprints on Arc have debated its spectral anomalies. Observations from NASA and ESA teams charted its disintegration. Discussions at conferences circled the same haunting core. These objects challenge the very categories of comet and asteroid. They are neither and both, and something else entirely. And for those who gazed longest at the numbers, the unease was not just scientific. It was philosophical. What does it mean if the universe is stranger than we imagined? What does it mean if matter, when born under alien suns, takes forms that feel unnatural to us? What does it mean if each interstellar visitor is less a rock and more a riddle? The shock of 3i Atlas was not in its brightness or its fragments alone. It was in the reflection it cast upon us. We are accustomed to a cosmos that obeys categories, stars and planets, comets and asteroids, life and non-life. But here was something that resisted those boundaries, a body that dissolved the comfort of definitions, a messenger that whispered, "The universe is not obligated to conform to our expectations." And so, astronomers found themselves at a threshold. They could measure, catalog, and debate. But the deeper truth was that 3i Atlas had unsettled the ground beneath certainty. Like Oumuamua before it, it was not merely an object. It was a reminder that science is not just the pursuit of answers, but the confrontation with questions that unsettle the soul. What then are these visitors? Debris from alien systems? Relics of collisions unimaginable in our skies? Or signs, however faint, that the cosmos holds architectures we do not yet understand? The shock was not only in the data, it was in the silence that followed. A silence filled not with ignorance, but with the weight of possibility. And as 3I Atlas drifted closer to Mars, breaking apart under the distant sun, it left behind more than fragments of dust. It left behind a question that will haunt astronomy for generations. Are interstellar objects natural wanderers, or the first signs that the universe is far more foreign, far more deliberate than we have yet dared to believe? In the unfolding story of 3I Atlas, discovery was only the beginning. Observation brought astonishment. But it was the deeper investigation that carried the weight of revelation. For as the world's most powerful instruments turned their gaze upon the visitor, the mystery only deepened. From the mountaintops of Mauna Kea, the Subaru telescope captured its faint profile. Wide mirrors pulled in the fragile light, stretching photons across detectors with relentless precision. In orbit above Earth, the Hubble Space Telescope followed. From the silence of space, its ancient eye locked on the fragments of Atlas, seeking clarity where ground-based telescopes found only distortion. The goal was simple in statement, yet impossible in consequence, to determine what this object truly was. A comet unraveling? A shard of alien debris? Or something stranger still? Spectroscopic analysis intensified. Beams of light spread into the colors of their hidden frequencies, revealed stories written in wavelengths. Astronomers expected the usual tale: emissions of water vapor, carbon monoxide, faint lines of dust scattering. And indeed, some of these were present. But woven into the spectra were subtleties that resisted explanation. The ratios of carbon compounds did not match ordinary solar system comets. Reflections at certain wavelengths appeared too sharp, too metallic, almost as if glimmers of artificial surfaces lay hidden beneath a veil of dust. The possibility lingered unspoken in most scientific reports, but it haunted the edges of conversation. What kind of surface could scatter light in such a way? At the same time, orbital modeling revealed its own enigmas. Using refined calculations, astronomers projected the path of 3I Atlas as it passed near Mars' orbital domain. Gravity should have dictated the motion with elegant certainty. Yet deviations emerged. Small but persistent. Shifts in velocity and trajectory that could not be fully accounted for by outgassing alone. Comets, when heated, release jets of vapor that act like tiny thrusters. This was the explanation offered for Oumuamua's strange acceleration. Yet with Atlas, the data resisted such neat closure. The gravitational field of Mars became part of the puzzle. As the planet's invisible reach extended outward, astronomers tracked how Atlas responded. Instead of a clean, predictable tug, patterns appeared that hinted at resistance, as though the object did not simply yield to gravity's pull, but pushed against it in subtle defiance. To some, the anomalies were statistical noise. To others, they were the fingerprints of a deeper truth. Night after night, telescopes watched as the fragments of Atlas drifted apart. Yet something uncanny persisted. Unlike natural comets, which crumble into chaotic sprays of dust, Atlas seemed to fracture along peculiar lines. The debris field stretched, but not in purely random scatter. Instead, shapes emerged. Reflections gleamed in patterns, as though pieces of a greater structure were aligning with each other. Reports from Hubble spoke of light curves punctuated by glimmers too steady to be dismissed as coincidence. Astronomers debated whether they were reflections from tumbling fragments, or something more enduring, surfaces holding shape even as the body decayed. In scientific journals and preprints, the tone remained cautious. The language spoke of unusual scattering, anomalous brightness variations, deviations in orbital modeling, but in private discussions, the whispers grew louder. Could this be a body not entirely natural? Could its strange resistance to decay, its glimmers of metallic reflection be the scars of something once assembled? The idea was dangerous, straddling the line between science and speculation. Oumuamua had provoked similar debates, with some suggesting it was a fragment of alien technology, a derelict solar sail drifting between the stars. Most scientists resisted the leap. They clung to the principle of natural explanations, but Atlas made resistance harder. For while Oumuamua accelerated mysteriously and Borisov looked like a comet, Atlas occupied the space in between. Its nature shifted the closer it was observed. From a faint comet at distance, it became a fractured riddle under scrutiny. From a natural wanderer, it became a body that seemed to decide how to fall apart. The closer it drew toward Mars, the sharper the tension became. If it was fragmenting, why did the fragments persist in ordered streams instead of dispersing chaotically? If it was a comet, why did its spectral fingerprints carry such unusual chemistry? If it was mere debris, why did its orbit resist the pure pull of gravity? Data flowed into archives. The European Southern Observatory analyzed its faint coma, noting asymmetries not explained by solar heating alone. NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office tracked its path, noting the anomalies but focusing on hazard assessment. Atlas would not strike Earth, its trajectory was safe. Yet safety did not ease the unease. For the threat was not an impact, but an implication. Philosophers of science have long spoken of the shock of the anomaly. The moment when evidence refuses to fit the model, and the model itself begins to crack. Atlas was such a shock, a body that looked less natural the closer it was studied. Astronomers began to compare notes with colleagues who had studied Oumuamua. The parallels became harder to dismiss. Oumuamua had no coma but accelerated anyway. Atlas had a coma, but one that behaved strangely, with brightness fluctuations that came in unnatural rhythms. Oumuamua had a shape that stretched beyond the bounds of ordinary formation. Atlas broke into fragments that suggested lines of symmetry. Both, in their own ways, resisted classification, and so a troubling pattern began to emerge. Interstellar objects, far from being ordinary debris, seemed to carry strangeness as their signature. As if the gulf between stars did not produce simple wanderers, but messengers of the unfamiliar. To probe further, simulations were run. Supercomputers modeled how an interstellar body might fracture under solar heating. They modeled the gravitational influence of Mars, the interplay of dust jets, the reflective properties of exotic minerals. Yet none of the models fully fit the data. Each explained part of the mystery, but left another part unresolved. This is the rhythm of science at its edge. Answers arrive not as conclusions, but as fragments. Each fragment revealing enough to deepen the question, never enough to resolve it. As 3 Atlas continued its passage, the philosophical weight of the investigation grew heavier. If natural explanations strained, did that mean artificial ones were nearer? Could such objects be the ruins of technologies long lost, fragments of civilizations we will never know? Could they be probes cast deliberately or simply debris scattered by alien industry? The questions pressed close, yet the answers remained cloaked. Most astronomers resisted the leap. They spoke of exotic natural processes, of comets formed in environments unlike our own. They warned against projecting intention upon chance. Yet even they acknowledged the strangeness. The fragments aligned too neatly. The reflections gleamed too sharply. The orbit resisted too quietly. In moments of silence, staring at data streaming across their screens, some felt the presence of something vast, not in the object itself, but in what it represented. That the universe may be filled with forms and processes we have not yet imagined. That what we call natural may be far broader than we know. That perhaps the line between natural and artificial is itself too narrow for the cosmos. The deeper the investigation went, the less certain the categories became. And so, Atlas passed through the field of our instruments, not as a comet alone, not as debris alone, but as a mirror that reflected the limits of our knowledge, a mirror that forced us to confront the possibility that interstellar space does not yield to simple understanding. When the Hubble Space Telescope captured its final images of the fragments, astronomers stared at points of light arrayed against the infinite dark. To the untrained eye, they were nothing more than dust, scattered like seeds across a black field. But to those who had followed the data, each point was heavy with implication. Each was a fragment of a body that had refused to decay as expected. Each was a shard of a riddle, a shard of a silence, and as the object drifted farther from the sun's warmth, its brightness fading, the questions it left behind burned brighter still. Was it breaking apart or reshaping itself? Were the reflections nothing more than coincidence or hints of a design? Were the orbital deviations merely errors in calculation or signs of a process we have not yet named? In the end, Atlas did not yield its secret. It did what interstellar visitors always do. It passed, it left. It vanished back into the gulf, carrying its riddles with it. But the investigation did not end with its departure. For in the silence it left, one truth became inescapable. The closer we look at such objects, the less natural they appear. And perhaps that is the deeper message. That the universe is not merely vast. It is strange. It is resistant. It is foreign in ways that language cannot yet hold. And so, the telescopes of Earth, from the volcanic summits of Hawaii to the orbit of Hubble above the clouds, remain fixed on the sky, waiting for the next visitor, waiting for the next shock, waiting for the next mirror to remind us that knowledge is never the end of mystery, but its beginning. As 3I Atlas drifted deeper into the inner solar system, nearing its closest approach to the realm of Mars, the weight of observation fell upon every instrument humanity could command. The object had already unsettled expectation. Now it demanded more than curiosity. It demanded scrutiny. In orbit around Mars, machines long tasked with studying the red planet prepared to look outward. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, with its high-resolution imaging system, adjusted its gaze. Instruments designed to map dust storms and ice caps recalibrated for the faint glimmer of a passing interstellar fragment. MAVEN, the Mars Atmosphere and Volatile Evolution mission, tuned its spectrometers. Built to study the Martian atmosphere, it now sought whispers in the light of Atlas, chemical fingerprints hidden in the spectra of a visitor from beyond the sun. The red planet became an outpost of cosmic observation, a staging ground where the eyes of human ingenuity, orbiting far from Earth, could gather data uncluttered by the distortion of atmosphere. If Atlas carried secrets in its composition, these orbiters might glimpse them: rare isotopes, unfamiliar elements, ratios of carbon or oxygen that defied solar system norms. Even some speculated traces of alloys, signatures of matter once engineered. Back on Earth, telescopes widened their fields. Subaru on Mauna Kea, Keck, and Gemini North. The Very Large Telescope in Chile. Each night they scanned the faint coma, their detectors straining to measure its pulse. The object brightened and dimmed in bursts as though releasing energy in rhythms. Spectrographs split the light, chasing subtle differences in wavelength. Could these be jets of exotic ice? Or something more? Astronomers pushed instruments to the edge of sensitivity. Adaptive optics sharpened images blurred by turbulence. Arrays coordinated, comparing results across hemispheres. Even amateur observers contributed, scattering a patchwork of images across forums and archives. Each data point mattered, each fragment of light another clue in a puzzle too vast to solve alone. And in conference halls, debate thickened. Researchers brought their findings to podiums, projecting light curves and spectral graphs against walls of darkened rooms. Some argued the anomalies were natural, a comet fragmenting under stress, nothing more. Others insisted the irregularities were too precise, the deviations too deliberate. Papers flowed onto Archive, each one dissected within hours. Titles spoke of non-gravitational accelerations, spectroscopic peculiarities, orbital anomalies. The language was careful, but the undertone was clear. Something about Atlas refused to fit. At NASA, a task group formed, echoing the coordination once assembled for Oumuamua. ESA mirrored the effort, Teams shared raw data across continents, attempting to converge on a model. Supercomputers simulated Atlas in silico, building digital twins of its fractured body. The simulations spun it in vacuum, heating it under the sun's rays, letting it fragment under stress. They projected trajectories, tested outgassing patterns, calculated brightness curves. Yet again, the models fit some things and failed others. Outgassing explained the acceleration, but not the rhythmic bursts. Fragmentation explained its fractured form, but not the ordered distribution of debris. Chemistry explained the spectra, but not the metallic glints. The simulations ended where the mystery began. Some researchers pushed further. They proposed missions. The notion of intercept probes rose again, as it had with Oumuamua. Could a spacecraft be launched quickly enough to chase Atlas before it faded into distance? The idea was tantalizing, but time was cruel. Interstellar visitors moved swiftly, and the lag between discovery and proposal often left little window for pursuit. Still, concepts were drafted. Small, agile probes, designed to launch quickly and accelerate using solar sails or advanced propulsion. Instruments for close flybys, cameras to capture surface details, spectrometers to taste the chemical breath of the coma. Engineers whispered of modular designs, spacecraft waiting in readiness, to be dispatched the moment another interstellar visitor appeared. Perhaps not for Atlas itself, its time was too short, but for the next. And there would be a next. That much was certain now, because 3 had already come in less than a decade. Oumuamua, Borisov, Atlas. What once seemed rare now felt inevitable. Interstellar objects were not anomalies. They were emissaries, frequent and uninvited, slipping through the solar system like shadows crossing a stage. To prepare for the next was not optional. It was destiny. The proposals took root in imagination and in budgetary drafts. Some argued for piggyback missions, small probes carried by larger spacecraft ready to detach and intercept. Others suggested networks of survey telescopes with greater sensitivity to detect such objects earlier, buying precious months or years of planning. Still others spoke of dedicated missions, spacecraft stationed in interplanetary space, waiting like sentinels, prepared to chase the next wanderer from beyond. In this way, Atlas became more than a puzzle. It became a catalyst. Its mystery drove not only observation but preparation. For the first time in human history, plans formed not only to watch but to pursue the next messenger across the dark. And yet, as the debates swelled, the data itself whispered with growing strangeness. High-resolution spectroscopy hinted at isotopes uncommon in solar system matter, ratios of deuterium to hydrogen that seemed elevated, traces of carbon chains that resisted classification, even whispers faint and contested of elements aligned in ways suggestive of alloys. Natural, possible, but ordinary? Unlikely. The coma continued its pulses, bright, then dim, bright again. Some argued this was stochastic venting, jets of gas breaking through a crust of volatile ice. Others plotted the intervals, noting they fell into patterns too steady to dismiss. Was it code? Or coincidence? The data allowed either. And in that allowance, imagination thrived. In the corridors of conferences, voices clashed. Some cited Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is usually correct. Exotic natural processes, they said. Unfamiliar but natural nonetheless. Others invoked Clarke's third law. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. If natural explanations strain at the edges, perhaps it is time to consider the unnatural. And through it all, the object itself drifted onward. Silent Mars with its orbiting instruments captured fleeting glimpses. Earth with its telescopes strained for clarity. Simulations filled supercomputer arrays, their outputs looping endlessly, always approximating, never resolving. Atlas resisted every tool as if its very essence was to remain uncertain. Perhaps that was the greatest lesson. That even as technology expands, Even as humanity sharpens its tools, the cosmos will always deliver enigmas beyond the reach of clarity. The unknown is not a failure of observation, but the signature of vastness. Atlas became a crucible of human inquiry. Machines in Martian orbit turned their sensors outward. Telescopes in Chile and Hawaii strained their mirrors skyward. Papers on Arcuf multiplied, debated in late-night exchanges. Engineers drafted missions, philosophers debated meanings, but the object itself offered no answer. It glimmered, it pulsed, it deviated. It resisted, and in that resistance lay the essence of the encounter. Not a revelation, but a reminder that science is not the conquest of mystery, but its conversation. That every telescope, every spectrometer, every simulation is not a weapon against the unknown, but a bridge toward it. As 3I Atlas passed through Mars's orbit and prepared to fade back into the dark, humanity was left with data, with arguments, with dreams of missions yet to come. But more than that, it was left with a truth: that the next visitor will come, and the next after that. And when they do, we will be watching, sharper, faster, better prepared. For now, Atlas slipped away, but in its passing it left behind more than fragments of dust. It left behind the blueprint of future science, the resolve to chase the next, the understanding that the universe does not wait for readiness, it arrives unannounced, and so the instruments remain poised and humming. Mars continues its orbit, its satellites ready to watch again. Earth's telescopes scan the sky, their mirrors turned outward. Proposals wait on desks, their schematics drawn. The next interstellar visitor is already on its way. It may be comet or shard or ruin or relic. It may be messenger or accident or sign. But whatever it is, the tools of science will be ready, and humanity will stand again at the edge of comprehension, staring upward into the silence, waiting for the next riddle cast across the stars. When 3I Atlas entered the sightlines of humanity's greatest instruments, it carried not only its fractured body, but also the burden of interpretation. Observation could reveal the path of light, the curve of orbit, the whisper of spectra. Yet interpretation was left to human minds, and human minds are restless. They cannot endure mystery without framing it in theories, without weaving speculation across the silence. The first explanations clung to the familiar. Perhaps, astronomers suggested, this was no more than a comet caught under unusual stress. Outgassing, the ancient process by which frozen ices vaporize under the sun's warmth, might be taking place in irregular bursts. On ordinary comets, sublimation is gradual, predictable, but in Atlas, the surface could be layered with exotic compounds, ices unfamiliar to the solar system, thawing in pulses rather than steady streams. This could explain the erratic brightening and dimming, the coma flickering like a heartbeat written in vapor. Exotic ices were not impossible. Interstellar space may scatter bodies forged under stellar conditions far from the sun's nursery, around red dwarfs with their violent flares, or within binary systems where gravity twists orbits into chaos. Chemistry might sculpt ices we have never seen. Carbon dioxide frozen into crystalline lattices, nitrogen under alien pressure. Compounds fused in the cold outskirts of alien systems, now released in brief, chaotic jets. Perhaps some said, Atlas was nothing more than a rare but natural fragment, showing us chemistry beyond our borders. Another theory placed Atlas as the scar of catastrophe, a collisional fragment from a shattered exoplanet. Across the galaxy, planetary systems form and break, worlds colliding in fiery violence, scattering debris into the interstellar deep. If Atlas was such a shard, then its fractured body, its metallic glints, its irregular orbit might all be signatures of planetary ruin. It could be a piece of a world once whole, now reduced to wandering fragments cast upon the stellar tide. To study it would be to study the grave of another system, to hold in light the ruins of a place no eye will ever see. But as the natural explanations multiplied, so too did the doubts. Outgassing might explain bursts, but why did they flare in rhythm so strangely ordered? Exotic ices might explain unusual chemistry, but why did its fragments align so oddly in space? A collisional fragment might carry metal, but why did it glint as though polished, reflecting sunlight like steel? And so, the speculative theories emerged. Whispered at conferences, written between the lines of papers, spoken more freely outside the halls of peer review. Some dared to imagine Atlas not as natural debris, but as a derelict. A probe once launched by another civilization, long since abandoned, now drifting into our star's domain. Its fractured body might not be random, but the decay of something once built. The glints of metal could be the remnants of surfaces forged for purpose, not accident. Its coma, flaring and fading, could be nothing more than structure breaking down, or perhaps the ghost of a system that once operated with intention. Others extended the vision further. What if Atlas was not a probe, but a shard of something grander? A fragment of megastructure. Perhaps once part of a Dyson swarm, the theoretical shells imagined to harness the power of entire stars. Across cosmic time, such structures might fracture, scattering fragments into the galactic sea. To encounter one would be to glimpse the ruins of engineering so vast it borders on myth. Atlas in this frame would not be unique. It would be one of countless shards, drifting messages from civilizations that had risen and fallen before ours even began. Still others lean toward the idea of intention. Not accident, not ruin, but delivery. A messenger object sent deliberately across the void. Its fractured form, its rhythmic pulses, its resistance to decay, all interpreted not as anomalies, but as design. Perhaps it was not meant for us. Perhaps it was meant for any civilization it might cross, drifting silently until eyes were sharp enough to see and minds were restless enough to question. A message written not in language but in presence, a sign that the universe is not silent, but waiting. Speculation pressed further into the fabric of physics itself. Could the anomalies in Atlas's orbit be the fingerprints of relativity? Tiny deviations emerging from the interplay of Einstein's equations, subtle warps in space-time magnified by the object's velocity? Or could they be quantum in nature, uncertainties in the behavior of matter when subjected to alien conditions? The frontier between orbital mechanics and quantum field theory is vast, but Atlas seemed to stand between them, defying the clarity of both. Perhaps the answer lay not in composition nor in design, but in laws of physics not yet written. And then came the voices of caution. Stephen Hawking had once warned that first contact could be perilous, that reaching out to civilizations more advanced than ours might bring danger, not wonder. If Atlas was artificial, if it was truly a messenger, should we not fear what it represents? What if it was not a gift but a test? Not an invitation but a trap? Carl Sagan, by contrast, had spoken of cosmic optimism, that the universe is vast, that intelligence might not be rare, and that contact could enlarge us rather than destroy us. In Sagan's vision, to encounter another civilization, even through the silence of a drifting relic, would be to know we are not alone. To know that thought itself blooms not only on Earth, but across the galaxy. Between Hawking's warning and Sagan's hope, Atlas hovered. It was both a specter of danger and a promise of connection. A body that could be the scar of violence or the shard of greatness. A ruin or a messenger. A warning or a gift. And through it all, the natural explanations did not fade. Many astronomers held to them with unyielding grip. Outgassing, exotic ices, collisional fragments, these were safe, measurable, grounded. To leap toward artificiality was to risk credibility, to drift into speculation unmoored from evidence. The line between science and imagination had to be guarded. Yet even these voices admitted the strangeness. They admitted that Atlas looked less natural the closer it came. They admitted that its behavior defied the neat categories of comet and asteroid. The speculative voices, in turn, admitted their vulnerability. They knew the data was incomplete. They knew that reflections might be nothing more than coincidence, that bursts might be nothing more than jets of vapor. They knew the danger of wishful thinking, of projecting intelligence where none exists. But they also knew that to dismiss the question entirely was to blind oneself to possibility. And so, Atlas became less a body of matter than a canvas for human thought. Upon its fragments, we projected our fears of ruin, our hopes of connection, our theories of physics, our visions of future and past. It became both comet and craft, both ruin and relic, both natural and intentional. It became, above all, a mirror reflecting not only the light of the sun, but the restless imagination of the species that watched it pass. In the end, no theory prevailed. Atlas, like Oumuamua before it, slipped from clarity into silence. Its body fragmented, its coma faded, its path carried it onward, away from Mars, away from Earth, back into the infinite dark. What it was remained unresolved. What it meant remained unanswered, but in its passing, something larger was revealed. That the universe does not only confront us with stars and planets, comets and dust, it confronts us with riddles. Objects that refuse classification, data that resists interpretation, strangeness that demands humility, and perhaps that is the deeper truth. That the cosmos is not merely a stage upon which humanity may one day encounter others. It is itself the encounter. Every fragment, every glimmer, every anomaly is a dialogue. Between what we think we know and what the universe insists we do not. Between Hawking's warning and Sagan's hope. Between science and wonder. Between silence and meaning. The Atlas was not merely an object. It was a question. A question cast across light years. A question that fractured into glints and pulses, that resisted gravity and definition, that slipped through our instruments leaving only echoes behind. And in that question, humanity found itself once more staring at the horizon of knowledge, reminded that the universe is not obligated to answer, but always willing to ask. As 3I Atlas drifted farther into the inner solar system, drawing close to the orbit of Mars, its strangeness only deepened. The distance narrowed, the data sharpened, and the mystery grew heavier. At first, the object had been faint and uncertain, a smudge of light upon digital sensors, a curiosity classified as a comet. But now, under the relentless scrutiny of Earth's most powerful telescopes, its features betrayed something more. Observers began to notice glints upon its surface, subtle flashes of reflection, shimmering like metal in the sunlight. Natural asteroids composed of silicate rock or icy composites rarely produce such clean, sharp glimmers. Dust scatters light diffusely. Ice reflects in hazy sheens, but metallic surfaces glint. They answer the sun with sudden, polished sparks. Atlas did not shimmer once nor twice, but again and again. The glints came irregularly, yet not randomly. Patterns began to emerge in the data, though fragile, like whispers caught on the wind. Some astronomers dismissed them as the chance reflections of tumbling fragments. Others argued they were signatures of composition, high nickel-iron content perhaps, or alloys forged in unusual stellar environments. Yet the thought lingered at the edge of reason. Could these reflections be more than matter alone? Could they be the gleam of surfaces once shaped, not merely shattered? If the glints unsettled, the behavior of its coma disturbed even more. A comet's coma, born of sublimating ice, brightens as it nears the sun, then fades predictably as it recedes. But Atlas refused this rhythm. Its coma flared and burst, then dimmed into near invisibility, only to surge again. The bursts carried a tempo, a cadence that seemed almost deliberate. Like pulses. Like coded signals written in light, no telescope could prove intention. No instrument could verify design. But the pattern gnawed at those who stared too long. Could a natural body brighten and fade in such a way? Was this fragmentation, jets of vapor breaking through the crust in intervals? Or was the object revealing itself layer by layer, as though its outer skin was peeling away? The questions darkened as Mars grew near. Orbital models projected its path with extraordinary precision, yet small deviations persisted. The gravitational pull of Mars should have bent its arc in a calculable sweep. Instead, Atlas seemed to hesitate, resisting slightly as though caught between trajectories. The numbers were small, fractions of velocity shifts, but in the clean mathematics of orbital mechanics, even the smallest deviation is a shout. In research halls, comparisons to fiction began to surface. Some scientists, speaking cautiously in private, invoked Arthur C. Clarke's Rendezvous with Rama, a story of an interstellar object that approached the inner solar system, first mistaken for a comet, only to reveal itself as something else entirely. Clarke's tale was meant as speculation, a work of imagination. Yet here, in the data of Atlas, echoes of fiction pressed against the walls of reality. Few dared to say the word aloud. Alien. Yet the silence carried its own weight. Instead, hypotheses proliferated. Some argued that Atlas was fragmenting violently, its coma bursts nothing more than volatile jets. Others suggested it was a rubble pile, a cluster of fragments holding together loosely, scattering glints as they tumbled. Still others spoke of exotic compositions, metallic ices, crystalline silicates, compounds forged in the fierce furnaces of red dwarfs or binary systems. Each explanation carried truth, yet none carried sufficiency. For the closer Atlas came, the less natural it appeared. Within the scientific community, division grew. One side anchored itself in the bedrock of caution. Natural origins, they insisted. Unfamiliar, yes. Exotic, yes. But still natural. To leap toward artificiality was to abandon the principles of evidence. The cosmos was vast enough to produce oddities without invoking intention. The other side whispered doubts. They pointed to the erratic coma, the metallic glints, the orbital hesitations. They reminded colleagues of Oumuamua's unaccountable acceleration. They noted how each interstellar visitor had broken the mold of expectation. Borisov had been comet-like, yet carried an unusually pristine composition, as though forged in an untouched stellar nursery. Oumuamua had been elongated beyond natural bounds, tumbling like no asteroid known. And now, Atlas carried within it the rhythm of pulses, the flash of metal, the refusal to obey decay. Could it truly be coincidence that all three carried strangeness as their essence? Papers emerged in cautious tones, published with careful restraint. Anomalous reflections, non-random photometric variability, orbital deviations inconsistent with outgassing models. The words did not declare, but they hinted. And behind the hints, the question swelled. Was Atlas natural or not? For those who gazed longest, the debate became less about answers and more about thresholds. How far could science stretch before speculation became necessity? How much strangeness must accumulate before caution became blindness? The tension spilled into philosophy. If the universe did indeed send visitors not entirely natural, what would that mean? Were they relics of civilizations long dead, their technologies reduced to drifting fragments? Were they probes abandoned or derelict, still gliding silently across the galactic dark? Or were they something else, born of processes so foreign that our words fail before they even begin? The closer Atlas came to Mars, the sharper these questions grew. For Mars itself seemed drawn into the enigma. Telescopic models suggested interactions between the planet's gravitational pull and the object's orbit that defied simplicity. It was almost as if Atlas was responding to Mars, not colliding, not captured, but brushing against its domain with puzzling reluctance. To watch it was to feel the weight of something unfinished. To chart its light was to sense a message written in a language not yet known. The public, catching fragments of the story, turned curiosity into speculation. News headlines framed Atlas as the alien comet, a phrase scientists rejected but could not entirely erase. Amateur astronomers spread images, their grainy captures adding to the mystique. And within the scientific community, the division widened. Some clung to naturalism with unyielding grip. Others quietly let the possibility of artificial origin drift closer to thought. And still, the coma pulsed. And still, the glints flashed. And still, the orbit wavered. In the history of astronomy, few objects have carried such disquiet. Not even Oumuamua, with all its anomalies, pressed the question so heavily. For Atlas seemed almost to perform, to reveal strangeness precisely at the moment of greatest scrutiny, to hide when distant, to unveil when near, as though distance had been protection, and closeness the unveiling of truth. Arthur C. Clarke once wrote that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Perhaps the corollary is also true. Any sufficiently unfamiliar natural process is indistinguishable from design. The boundary between the two is thin, blurred by ignorance and wonder. Atlas stood upon that boundary, casting its reflection into both worlds. For scientists, the escalation was not in danger, but an implication. No threat loomed of collision, no warning of impact. The escalation was epistemic, a fracture in understanding, a deepening of the mystery that forced humanity to stare at the horizon of its own knowledge. As it passed through the gaze of Mars, Atlas carried with it the unbearable weight of the question unspoken. Not whether life exists elsewhere, not whether the cosmos is inhabited, but whether the objects crossing into our skies carry within them the first signs of an answer. And so, the division hardened. On one side, naturalism. On the other, the suspicion of something else. Between them, silence. A silence not empty, but heavy. The silence of data that whispers without resolution. The silence of a cosmos that reveals just enough to deepen the ache of wonder. In that silence, 3i Atlas drifted on. Its coma flickering like coated breath. Its surface glinting like fractured metal. Its orbit bending like a question mark carved across the void. And humanity, staring upward, was left to wonder, is this the debris of chance, or the trace of intention? The alien question had become unavoidable. Yet the answer remained locked within the fragments of a body that refused to explain itself. Humanity now stands at a threshold, a line drawn not in dust or stone, but in perception. For 3i Atlas was never only a fragment of matter passing through the solar system. It was and remains a mirror, a reminder that the universe does not bend to comfort, that it speaks most clearly through strangeness. To some, Atlas is simply a comet, a natural wanderer cast from a distant star, fractured by heat, gleaming with unusual chemistry but nothing more. To others, it is something else, a messenger, a relic, perhaps even a signpost planted in silence, pointing toward truths we have not yet the language to hold. Between these two visions lies the paradox of knowledge itself. The closer we come to understanding, the stranger the universe appears. From afar, Atlas was faint, ordinary, a blur of light lost among stars, familiar, almost forgettable. But proximity stripped away the veil. Glints of metal, rhythms of brightness, orbits that refused pure calculation. It looked alien, not because it changed, but because our perception sharpened. Distance had protected us with ignorance. Nearness revealed a terror, the terror of truth untamed. Perhaps this is the irony of science. Every telescope, every spectrometer, every simulation is designed to close the gap between question and answer. Yet in practice, each answer fractures into further questions. Every detail observed in Atlas expanded the mystery. Its light was data. Its silence was weight. Its fragments were less the death of a comet than the birth of a riddle. And so humanity finds itself staring at a paradox. The more it knows, the less it understands. Knowledge expands, but certainty recedes. The very act of discovery stretches the horizon of the unknown. Atlas was not the resolution of a question. It was the deepening of a wound. Mars became the stage upon which this threshold unfolded. The red planet, long imagined as humanity's first contact world, the place where alien life might stir in dust or under ice, now became the backdrop for something stranger. Not life upon its surface, but mystery passing above it. Not Martian canals or microbes, but an interstellar fragment brushing against its domain. In myth, Mars has always been a symbol of conflict, of longing, of the future conquest of space. In the era of Atlas, Mars became something else, a witness. The silent witness of a possible first encounter, not with beings but with meaning itself. The irony was sharp. Humanity had always looked to Mars for contact. Yet contact arrived not from beneath its soil, but from beyond its skies. Atlas, with its fractured form and pulsing coma, became entangled with Mars not in collision, but in symbolism. The dream of contact shifted from the surface of a planet to the silence of interstellar drift. And in that silence, a deeper reflection emerged. What does it mean for something to be alien? The word has always carried the weight of otherness, of beings with intelligence and intention. But Atlas forced another perspective. Perhaps alien does not mean life. Perhaps alien means unfamiliar. Perhaps it is not the presence of others that unsettles us, but the recognition that the universe itself is stranger than we imagined. Alien, then, is not necessarily a spacecraft or a signal. It is the shimmer of light that defies chemistry, the orbit that resists mathematics, the fragment that refuses decay. Alien is the recognition that the categories upon which science rests, comet, asteroid, natural, artificial, are too narrow for the cosmos. Alien is the confrontation with forms of matter, patterns of behavior, processes of physics that feel unnatural only because we have not yet learned their nature. And perhaps alien is the reflection it casts back upon us. Atlas, in all its silence, forced humanity to confront its own smallness, its own longing, its own fragile position in a universe where even fragments of rock from elsewhere carry mysteries heavier than certainty. To watch Atlas was not simply to measure a body. It was to see, in its refusal to conform, the limits of human knowledge and the humility demanded by the cosmos. Stephen Hawking warned that first contact could be perilous. Carl Sagan believed it could be hopeful. Yet Atlas showed that contact may not come as either threat or gift. It may not come as voice or machine. It may come as silence, as fragments, as riddles written in the physics of another sun. Perhaps contact is not an event, but a perception. Not a conversation, but a confrontation. Not with others, but with mystery itself. This is the emotional weight of 3i Atlas, that whether natural or artificial, ruin or relic, comet or construct, it compels us to rethink what alien truly means. Not distant beings, but the strangeness of existence itself. Not invasions or visitations, but the vast indifference of a universe where matter carries histories we cannot yet decipher. In this light, Atlas becomes less an object and more a symbol. A shard of otherness cutting across the solar system, reminding us that the cosmos is not our home, but our horizon. That the familiar sky hides depths beyond comprehension. That what drifts between stars is not only debris but possibility, and so the object passes. It fragments, it fades. It leaves behind nothing tangible but dust and data. Yet in its wake, it leaves a reflection that cannot fade. A reminder that alien is not always external. Sometimes alien is the recognition of our own smallness, our own fragility, our own hunger for meaning in a universe that offers none willingly. Perhaps this is the final paradox, that the most alien thing about Atlas is not the object itself, but the reflection it casts upon us. In its silence, we see the noise of our own questions. In its strangeness, we see the boundaries of our categories. In its passing, we see the brevity of our understanding. And in that reflection, the cosmos speaks, not in words, not in signals, but in silence that demands humility, silence that expands imagination, silence that whispers again and again that the universe is far stranger, far older, and far more alien than we have ever dared to believe. The night sky holds its breath. Telescopes fall silent. Computers dim their simulations. Atlas drifts onward, another shadow swallowed by the dark. Humanity remains staring upward, carrying not answers but questions. And perhaps that is enough. Perhaps the greatest gift of Atlas is not revelation, but reflection. For in its light we glimpse not others, but ourselves. And in its silence we hear not emptiness, but the echo of a universe forever beyond our grasp, forever alien, forever whole.